Have you ever bought a tent hoping it to be the ultimate shelter, only for it to arrive and to be not what you expected it to be? Today, I'm going to tell you why I sold the Hilleberg Allak 3, and while it's a very strong and sturdy tent, it's maybe not as versatile as I was hoping it to be. Hey there everyone, welcome back to the channel. Mauser here, and on this channel we talk everything hiking, gear and everything in between. If that sounds like your jam, consider hitting that subscribe button, the like button. We're going to get straight into it today. We're talking about the Hilleberg Allak 3, and it was a tent I had high hopes for, but ultimately had to sell. Let's get into it. We're talking here today about the Hilleberg Allak 3. Now, the Hilleberg Allak 3, I hope I am pronouncing that correctly, is marketed as a 4-season bomb-proof all-conditions shelter. And absolutely no doubt, it is strong and capable of withstanding some extremely strong weather and wind. But it didn't live up to the hype for me. Now, Hilleberg lists it as a 3-person tent. There is the Hilleberg Allak 2, which is a little bit smaller. They released this. I bought this not long after it was released, and that is the other point. I bought this around 3 years ago, I think, when it was released. I sold it about a year and a half ago. I'm making this video today because it entered my mind recently when I was doing a bit of a tent video a couple of videos ago. You can check that out. Link is up there to that video. And that video got me thinking about the Hilleberg Allak that I once had and I sold about a year and a half ago. And it's got some issues that I wanted to talk about and run through today. Now, the Hilleberg Allak 3 falls into Hilleberg's red label range. They've got the yellow label, the red label, the black label, and I quote, "The red label tents are built for both short and longer trips in generally less demanding conditions in all seasons, such as exposed mountain terrain, forests in both winter and summer, and the like, but where you still may encounter severe situations." Not bad. Their emphasis on lighter weight makes them less than ideal, and this is from Hilleberg, makes them less than ideal for harsh environments and extended adventures in demanding conditions. They are, however, quite capable of withstanding storm conditions, and that is the reason I purchased this tent. Tasmanian conditions are probably perfect for the Hilleberg tents. Those extreme conditions they're talking about, that is Antarctica, Arctic sort of expeditions, snow, ice, really high winds. But for Tasmanian conditions and winters, this is why I purchased this tent. It certainly fit the bill for Tasmanian weather. Quick disclaimer before we get into the details. I have no sponsorship or any affiliations with any of the brands I mention on these videos. Just get that out of the way quickly. And another disclaimer, I think Hilleberg make fantastic tents, fantastic gear. I've had a couple over the years. I use their tarps. I think they're awesome tents, but I honestly didn't do enough research when I first purchased this tent around 3 years ago. So it is probably more or less my fault that I bought this tent and then ended up selling it on again. That is my fault, but thought I'd make a video to tell you what you need to think about when you are purchasing this tent. First up, why did I buy this tent? Well, I was after something to replace my old Mother Hubber tent. I've talked about the MSR Mother Hubbers before on this channel.
Yep, so it's 4:30. We're here, set up. I told you we'd have the tent set up in an hour time.
Great tent, but I wanted something that would withstand winds, really strong winds that I've experienced on trips before.
A little bit anxious to get out and check the damage of the tent because it doesn't look too good.
A bit better than the Mother Hubber, something that was a bit more bomb-proof, because when those big winds come in on those mountain ridge tops in Tasmania, it can destroy your tent, and I have destroyed a couple of tents over the years. I've had them repaired. I wanted something that didn't potentially get destroyed in these weather conditions. I also wanted something that I could take my kids hiking in, so I wanted a 3-man tent that could comfortably fit 3 people in it. My Mother Hubber, built in about 2010, comfortably fitted 3 people on quite a few trips over the years. I wanted something similar, so I ended up going with the Hilleberg Allak, even though it was going to be a bit heavier at 3.7 kilos, as listed on the Hilleberg website. That is 8 pounds, 3 ounces in the Imperial system, so it's a heavy tent. Hilleberg call it a lightweight option. They're building tents for expeditionary forces to Antarctica, places like that, like I said. So it was heavier for me, but I bit the bullet and bought it with the expectation it was a similar size to the Mother Hubber. First up, the tent arrived, I set it up, had a good look at it, and the first and biggest issue was the size. So back to the tent. It arrived, unpacked it, set it up. It looked a little small. Now, I did actually get the tape measure out and measure it against the dimensions provided on the website, almost spot on. There was very little differentiation in the dimensions. So I was comfortable in the fact that it's only a tiny bit smaller than my old MSR Mother Hubba, and that it should suit my needs out of the track. So while it claims to be a 3-person tent, it is a tight squeeze. So the first trip I took this on was with my 2 sons, good weather conditions. I took this tent and I took my 12-year-old and at the time 10-year-old, and we went up to a nice little tarn and a plateau, climbed a couple of mountains and camped there for the night. And let me tell you, it was a very uncomfortable night's sleep. In fact, a rough night's sleep would be an understatement. Now, the website currently lists the dimensions of this tent. It's got a tapered length. It is wider at one end than the other. So at the end where your head would be, as listed on the website, it is 67 inches wide, 170 centimetres, whereas at the other end where the feet would be, it is 63 inches wide, which is about 160 centimetres. It's quite a long tent. It's 230 centimetres long, 91 inches long, so it is good in that respect. Something like my old MSR Mother Hubba that I used was around 70 inches wide, so not a huge difference in width, but it just feels like a palace in that thing compared to the Allak. Now, the other factor, of course, is the width of the sleeping pads. I'm a bigger guy, I'm 6'3". I really need a 25-inch pad. I went into pads on another video recently, but as you can see over there, I've got my sleeping pads. They're all mummy-shaped pads, 25 inches though at the shoulder, apart from the regular size Neo Air. But I took Thermarest Pro Light, I took Thermarest Neo Air X Therm and a Neo Air X Light. So I took basically 2 25-inch pads and a thinner pad, and we could not get them in a configuration that allowed us to shut the tent properly. So we had pads overlapping each other. We were on top of each other all night. It was not a comfortable night's sleep. So if you're going to be using this as a 3-man, you're going to need 20-inch pads. Absolute maximum, and even then it's going to be a tight fit, especially if you've got bigger guys all sort of my size. So that was the first problem. Next up, the other small issue, not a big issue, but it was kind of annoying, was the Flysheet tension. And I found that no matter how careful I was in setting the tent up, I couldn't get full tension around the apexes, around the outer vestibules of the Flysheet. I couldn't get the tension right. I tried and tried and tried. I looked up online if I was doing something wrong. It was set up properly, so I don't know what that was about. It was just a bit flappy, a bit loose, and in the wind it would flap around a lot. So that was another small niggly issue that did annoy me a bit. I was actually checking the tent to make sure that I had received the Hilleberg Allak 3. I checked the labelling and everything because I thought maybe I had received an Allak 2 with the wrong fly sheet. It all checked out. It was all the right gear. One thing I did not do was contact Hilleberg themselves. I'd used the tent. I figured this is my problem. I ended up selling it on eBay. It was in excellent condition, by the way. The other issue that I did have, and I knew this going in when I bought it, was the weight. I was prepared to carry the extra weight out on the track. I was happy with that to begin with, but when I knew that I was never going to fit 3 people in this tent, that immediately negated that point. If I'm going to be carrying a 3.7 kilo tent in Tasmanian conditions on 10-day trips where I've got no support, if I'm carrying a tent that heavy, it's a 3-man tent, I want 3 men in that tent. So we're carrying no more than sort of 1.2 or 3 kilos each in tent, and I simply couldn't do that with this. I would end up having to carry 2 kilos basically of tent between myself and one other person, so 2 kilos each we would have to carry in tent, which is a massive weight. It's double what we would normally carry in tent weight on a 10-day trip. Now, if I'm comparing it to something else in a similar sort of category, I would be comparing it to another tent that I own. I have the MSR Access 2, which is a 4-season tent from MSR. Now, the MSR make a 3-man in the Access, and just looking at some stats from the MSR Access 3, this thing is slightly wider. It is 70 inches wide compared to 67. It is 84 inches long compared to 91 in the Allak 3, so it's a bit shorter. In hindsight, I probably should have gone with the Access 3. I do have the Access 2, like I said, great tent. I love that tent. It is bomb-proof, and if I was going to go for a 3-man again, I'd probably look at the MSR Access 3. As I look at the stats here, that weighs in at about 2.3, 2.4 kilogram compared to 3.753 that my Allak weighed when I weighed it on the scales. So I should have done my research a bit better there. That weight is much, much less. MSR Access 3 is 1.4 kilos less than the Allak. Having said that, if I was going to Antarctica or somewhere like that, somewhere crazy where the weather is going to be just a whole nother level above, I would be going with the Hilleberg. No doubt at all. But for Tasmanian conditions, where I'm doing the majority of my hiking, I think the Access would be fine. And like I said, I've got the Access too, and that has been fine in all the conditions I've taken it in Tasmania. So I still do have the MSR Access 2. That is now my 4-season tent that I use. It's lighter. It's a bit quicker to set up, I think. It is smaller than the 3-man Allak. Obviously, it's a 2-man tent, therefore it's smaller. It is still a little tight inside. You can fit your 2 pads in, but you can't fit a whole lot of gear in. So there is that sort of weighing up to do. If I'm going on a longer trip, I'm probably going to take a 3-man tent still, something like my Big Agnes. We'll go into that on another video, do a review of that. But if it's looking like crazy winter conditions, the Access is coming every time. So summing up, look, the Hilleberg, they make great tents. I just had those few little issues with it. If you've got a Hilleberg, an Allak in particular, have you had trouble with Flysheet tension? Because I just could not get it taut at all like I can with other tents. I could not figure that out. My friends couldn't figure it out. Look, I should have done my research a bit better. Definitely, I am not putting down Hilleberg at all. I think they make great gear. Like I said at the start of this video, they are a good product, a good brand, and I'm not deterring you from buying a Hilleberg tent at all. I just think buy it for the purpose that you need it. Does that make sense? I don't think that makes sense. Does that make sense? If you're going to get an Allak 3, I would be of the expectation that you're going to be using it as a 2-man with a good amount of room in there for gear storage, that sort of thing. I wouldn't be buying it as a 3-man tent. But I never really do buy a 3-man tent as a 3-man tent. I generally buy it as a roomy 2-man. But on this occasion, I did buy it so I could fit myself and 2 of my kids in. I thought that would be easy, but it wasn't. So there you go. That is it. That is the Hilleberg Allak 3. Why I ended up selling it on to someone in the United States. I hope they're enjoying the tent. If you're watching and you bought a Hilleberg tent from Mauser, then I hope you're enjoying it and it is doing some good treks up there in North America. That would be fantastic. I think it's found the right home in North America because you might need something a bit sturdier up there. If you like the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell thing and you'll get notified when another video comes out. In the meantime, tell me about your experience with the Hilleberg tents. Do you like them? Do you love them? Do you loathe them? Let me know. Do you have an MSR Access? Tell me about that one. I'd love to hear. If you've got the 3-man, I've got the 2. Would love to hear you. Do you have a suggestion for another roomier 3-man tent that is relatively lightweight? Can you tell me? Please, I'd love to hear from you. Sign up for the newsletter below. Look at the Mauser merch shop. Check that out below, and I will see you on the next one. I've got a day walk coming up tonight. I'm heading out tonight, heading on a bit of a mission. We're going to release that video in the next few weeks. Look forward to that one. There is a river crossing involved. I will stay tuned, and until then, I better go get packed, better get ready, and hit the trails. So, hope you're hitting them too, and I will see you next time. Enjoy the day, and over and out.